computer. No. Okay, well, hi everyone. I'm delighted to be here today. My name is Elena Zucker, and I'm a consultant and speaker. And I have the honor of being with um, a very prominent and well-known person who is an expert on all things LinkedIn. And his name is Adam Houlihan. Some of you watching this are very familiar with Adam and his very generous sharing about his vast knowledge of LinkedIn. And so let me just give you a little background because really it's the essence of why LinkedIn is such a presence in everybody's life now. So my main topic is influence. I'm an author. The topic of my speeches and books is The Secrets of Influence. More about that later. So I saw Adam offering something. It was in my feed, and he was offering a free webinar about LinkedIn, which I always was eager to know more about. And also I saw that he was giving away a very hefty book called Influencer. And I thought, well, hey, I never heard of him. And this looks like it's in my territory. I wonder what he teaches about influence. And so that was how I first got to know about Adam. And important, I looked him up and saw that he has over 100,000 followers, because we can now have followers more than the limit on connections on LinkedIn. And so since I have been launching some new things, which I'll get to later, I thought, well, let me learn everything I can and see whether there's some synergy. So I would say this might be almost a year ago. And as I was just saying to Adam, there's nothing like a determined woman. So I made contact. I asked to join his network. I wrote to one of his people, actually Ron Tracy, because I saw that I could not reach Adam directly. And long story short, I then was introduced to a lovely, competent young man named Matt Vieira, who is charged with, among many things, vetting the guests that Adam talks to on these sort of spontaneous shows. So this is being recorded, and you're hearing the recording. This is not live. So let me just give you the bridge, and here's how today's going to go. I will ask you I'm going to ask Adam some questions all about his expertise, that is LinkedIn. He, I believe, is the world's expert on LinkedIn. He just knows a lot and shares a lot. And so I will ask him these questions, and then we'll turn it around, and Adam will ask me some questions about my work, my writing, my theory, etc. So the way that I would describe what bridges our two buckets of expertise, if you will, is that Adam helps you maximize your LinkedIn presence, profile, positioning, presentation. I got all the way to these alliterations, Adam, thought you'd like it, all the way to prominence. And that's the name of his company, Prominence Global. So he wants you to have not only a presence and a lot of followers, but a prominent presence so that you leap off the page, you stand out in LinkedIn. Now, once you get that presence and positioning and prominence, and you get that coveted one-on-one, either on Zoom or video chat right on LinkedIn, or even on, an old-fashioned phone call, where I come in is what do you do to maximize that valuable meeting that you've gotten with this prospect? And so I teach influence skills. I help you learn your influence profile and how to judge and assess the decision styles of other people. And the result, I believe, is giving you what I like to call portable power or portable personal power. So with that, anything you want to ask me, Adam, about that before I get into my questions to you?
Hey, Helena. No, you've covered it really, really well. And I think what you were talking about, that bridging is really important because why, initially somebody could think if they looked at us, your profile and mine, for example, you might consider us competitors, but we're really not. Whilst
Exactly.
we're in the same sphere, what we do is really about getting you to that conversation and where people know, like, and trust you. And what you do, Elena, is that next step afterwards. So really, what we do is very, very complementary in what
Yes,
they do. Same general area of influence, however, in different parts of the process.
exactly. But the important thing is we're talking to the same people.
Correct.
So in a way, it's kind of like a seamless learning progression, if you will. So with that, I want to ask you so many questions. I hope people have been lucky enough to attend your webinars where you give an amazing amount of knowledge and the replays. So these are what I've done is I've divided. I had a lot of questions, and then I divided them into some kind of intellectual chunks. So the first section will be all about profiles, since that's, task number one on LinkedIn. And then we're going to talk about content because everybody wants to post content, but there's good content and content that gets ignored. And Adam has some wonderful tips and tricks and advice about that. So with that, so I'm going to start about profiles. So Adam, what's the biggest mistake you see people making on their profiles?
Wow, the biggest mistake. There's a few, Elena, but probably the most important mistake is the two things that are the most visual part of your LinkedIn profile is, of course, the image. Your profile image, the image of ourselves, and that background banner that sits behind it.
Yes.
So the two challenge things I see is, firstly, that profile image is often really out of date. And I'm sure you would chime in on this one, Elena. But one of the big problems with that, like, we all think, hey, we want to look our best online, things like that. But if your profile image is 10 years out of date, or heaven forbid, even more, what happens is when that conversation moves from online to, as Elena was saying earlier, where you're face to face. Now, whether that's over Zoom or a coffee shop or whatever it is, there's this big disconnect that happens
Yes.
because that person's expecting to see this younger version
Oh
of
my
you.
God, yes.
And then all of a sudden it's like, wow. And you'll see it. And I could give you an example of that. I had this happen. This is over a
Sure.
year ago now, but exactly that. I'm based in Australia, the other side of the world to you, in Montreal, in Canada. But I agreed to meet somebody at a local coffee shop, and when I met them, this lady was 20 years older than her profile image, and there was just like this physical reaction where I just kind of went like this, which is not in any way concerning how she looked. It was just I was expecting something completely different. So that's
Yes.
the first big mistake, is make sure your profile, whatever we look like, just be real, just be yourself. Okay, obviously get a good headshot, but make sure it's not more than a couple of years old. The second one, of course, is around that background banner. And one mistake is not having one, just having that generic thing that LinkedIn leaves there,
Yes.
which is terrible. Or I see people trying to pack so much information into that section that, and what we're always forgetting is that the high majority of views now happen on these things, mobile devices.
Yeah,
So
so
that
you
background
can't
image
see
banner's
all the
very small.
logos and everything on there.
Yeah, or a lot of text. And because it's so small, it becomes very difficult to read. So the background banner should just have a very small amount of copy and images so that it's
Mhm.
nice and large. That's the biggest mistake I see.
Excellent. Yeah, a lot of people ignore it, and I think you once described it as valuable real estate, the
It is
banner,
very,
and not to be ignored, but we have to be aware that everybody's, looking at things on this. Absolutely. Now, another question is, what do the rankings mean that LinkedIn gives our profile?
yeah, it's there's a few rankings, and the one you want is called All Star. Now, it's quite misleading though, Elena, because All
Yeah.
Star, it just means that you have completed all the sections of your profile that LinkedIn deem as important.
Ah,
Now, it doesn't mean to say that you've completed them really well. It just means, yeah, you've got a profile image, and you've got a position description, and you've got a professional headline. You've filled out, what your education, all the
checked
minimum
all the
requirements.
boxes.
You literally just ticked all the boxes. It doesn't mean to say you've written a great story about who you are or what your organization's about and all those sort of things. So All Star is the only one that you want to aim for. That's the highest. If you've got any of the ones below that, it just means you haven't actually completed some parts of the your profile that LinkedIn deem important. But yes, even though you get to All Star, it just don't be misled by that means that you're an All Star, like say in the NBA or something like that. It's not like
No,
that at all.
but let me ask you a sub question here. So, where do people see the breakdown? Let's say you have a 3-star or something. What will it say, and where might you see the individual parts that are missing?
So one, they don't tell you which parts are missing. You just got
Oh,
to
they don't. Okay.
unfortunately, we help people with that. We have like a free profile course that makes sure you go through all those steps. But the when you're logged into your own account, in the middle of it, you'll see what's called a dashboard. And
Yes.
if on that dashboard, it'll have like a line graph going from left to right. And it'll show you where in that journey you are to. It'll show All Star on
Oh,
the far
good, good,
left,
good.
right, but once you reach it, it'll just disappear. So if you've got nothing on there, then that means
It
you're
means you're
kind of
good
at
to go.
good to go.
Okay, and does that happen for you whether you're a premium member or a free member?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Free or whether
Okay,
you've got premium, it'll still be there.
okay, good, thank you. Now, is there such a thing as SEO for your profile?
There is, yeah. So it's kind of different to how it's done on, say, a website or things like that. But there's certain parts of your profile that LinkedIn's looking at for different reasons, mostly about knowing where to show you in searches. That's the most important thing. And the areas they're looking at that are important are the professional headline. So that's that piece just right underneath your your name. And then if you've activated, and by the way, you should, a section called creator mode, and you'll also
Yes.
see that in your dashboard. It'll allow you to put in up to 5 hashtags. And they're the topics that you would be talking about in your content. Well, that's at least how you should do them. So it looks at those. Then it looks at what you use as the position description. So, and by the way, Elena, one of the worst things you can put there is something like president or vice president or founder or owner or things like that. Those terms, because this is one of those areas that LinkedIn really looks at, but it's also the areas that all the marketers look at as far as going after you as far as messages and things. So if you look at mine, I am the owner and founder of our business promise global, but it never says that anywhere on my profile.
Okay.
What it says is LinkedIn expert. So what I'd highly recommend is that you think about, how you do your position description as what you'd like people to find you for in searches. What's that term? And then the last one, Elena, is down the bottom where it's got it's called skills.
Yes.
So the top 3 skills are quite important that, again, you put in there. Think of it like search terms. Like if you look at mine, it says LinkedIn expert and LinkedIn and published author, things like that. So things you want to be found for in searches. That's kind of your simple version of SEO for
Okay, of
LinkedIn.
SEO. Well, that's good because I didn't want to put CEO because I mean I am, but I'm really a pretty lean and mean operation. I didn't think it means anything. And I have influence expert, influence
Perfect.
author, influence trainer. Now,
Perfect.
one
That's
thing I want
exactly.
to clarify, because I have the advantage as an interviewer today of I was just on your class about a week ago. So you said something that now about 3 hashtags is that for posts or
Yeah.
for posts?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
thank you.
again, you can put as many hashtags as you like. However, only 3 get indexed into the actual searchable term that
Okay.
LinkedIn creates, and it's the first 3, no matter where you put them on on that post. So more than 3 is kind of redundant. And it also, the other reason, Elena, is, again, we're talking about coming at this whole presence on LinkedIn as a person of influence. So a person of influence is very different to a person who is a marketer. And so marketers use lots of hashtags. So immediately, as soon as you see a post with lots of hashtags, in your head, you're going to go, this is marketing, and you disconnect from it.
Yes.
For a small number of hashtags doesn't bother us, but 3 is the magic number.
I think it's confident. I think that like it's insecure to put a million of them, right? And I think
It is.
it's just like streamlined and elegant to only have a few of the most important.
Yeah, the other problem I find, Elaine, why people sometimes inadvertently do it is because they've read some marketing copy and it says you got to use all these hashtags. So if you're on, say, Instagram or something, a post having 30 hashtags is not
Well, that's a
uncommon.
different story.
Totally different. So yes, you got to remember, each platform these days has their own set of rules and ways to use them. So I'm not saying in general that you shouldn't do that in social media. I'm just saying on LinkedIn, you should only use 3.
Okay, great. Now, here's a question. I think you share it in your webinar. Do you have some secret sauce about profile optimization?
Yeah, I'll tell you one which, and you can see it on my profile very clearly. And what it is, Elena, if you have a look at my profile image, the image of me, I'm not
Yeah,
looking face to camera. I'm actually, looking off to
you're
the
looking
right.
off. Yes.
Yeah. And people often ask, well, why do you do that? That's goes against everything that headshot
Like
photographers and
about
everything told me
TV and
about.
everything. Yeah. So
Yeah,
why?
so why is because what I'm trying to do, I know that when people look at a LinkedIn profile, the very first thing they're always going to look at is the image of you, whoever's profile they're looking at, because as humans, we're just hardwired to look at other humans. So
Mm-hmm.
we know that that's the first place that their eyes are going to go. Now, when I'm looking across to the right, what it does is make you look across to the right. And what I'm doing is
Oh,
moving you across to look at what I've written on that banner.
on the
That
banner. Oh,
yeah.
that's brilliant.
So that's the
Oh,
little
I love that.
that's the
That
little
is a
secret
secret sauce.
we teach all of our clients. So there you go, a little bit of
Wow.
secret insider knowledge there.
Wow. I'm going to go do that immediately. Do I look very different from my headshot now that we're
Uh,
talking?
No, not too bad, but definitely I'd say, yeah, get one, you
I'm
know,
going to
where
get a
you're
newer one.
looking off to the right like
I
that.
love that idea. That is brilliant.
The other thing, though, Elena, you've got to be very, very careful in doing that is make sure that the background is very plain. So if there's, say I took that image right now where you can see my background here, and even though if I was looking off to the right, the thing is there's all this stuff in the
There's a
background.
lot of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like books and there's world map and plants and stuff. So people can get distracted by looking at those things instead of
Exactly.
looking off to the right. It doesn't have to be a white background, but it has to be a clear, just a, it can be blue, it can be black, it can be gray, whatever you like.
Okay,
Just make sure
great.
there's nothing else competing
Well, I
with
would
your.
probably do a professional headshot because
Yeah.
I use it for speeches and things like that. And for today, just apropos of what we're discussing, I have just a plain mirror behind me because on the other side, I won't show it to you now, but it's a whole wall of artifacts collected from my travels all over the world. So it's fascinating and very busy. And people would be very distracted there. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to move on now to the questions about content because there's so many varied opinions, and quite honestly, people don't know who to listen to. I listen to you because I have taken your advice and it's gotten me good results. So we're going to do a few questions about content.
Sure.
Sorry?
I said, sure, let's do it.
Okay, great. So how important is it to share content, and how on LinkedIn? We're not talking about other platforms because they're very different. And part of that is how often should we post content?
Well, two good questions there, Lena. So the importance is that, now we can all have a nice profile and look professional, things like that, but that's only creating a very entry level of influence. True influence is coming from your opinions and the things that you have to say and what you share about. So is it important? Very important. What you should share, again, very important. And how often, again, look, there's two ways to think about this. There's one from, how often do your audience want to hear from you?
Yeah.
And I'll guarantee you it's less than you think. So, and the second thing is, of course, how does the algorithms on LinkedIn treat your content? So the magic number, the secret sauce is between 3 and 5 times per week. Personally, I only post 3 times a week. I believe less is more.
Oh, good. Okay.
Post really insightful, good quality content less often, and I guarantee you people will engage with it more than
Oh,
if
I
you're trying
like
to
that.
post every single day, or heaven forbid twice a day or anything like that. There's also a lot of other things that happen to your content when you do that algorithmically. So the magic number is between 3 and 5, but the real elite of people do it no more than 3 times a week.
So that's like restraint. I mean, that seems to be the message there.
Yeah, very much
Even
so.
if you think you have something brilliant to say, control yourself because the world may not want to hear from you every day.
That's it.
Okay. Now, here's something that I've wondered about because you mentioned it once. I'm like the student who hangs around after class and I keep asking you these questions. The question is type of content to post, which you just touched on. But another question I have is picture or no picture. Like some of the things, for example, that one posts, I might post a blog, let's say, and then post it as a longer article. Usually it's a story about business, my business, and the lesson for the reader. And so then I post it as a short, I've called them influence hacks. And that's like the really, really short version. with a
Yeah.
link to a longer one. But my question is, does the algorithm like a picture, like you wouldn't like think about it as a journalist with a picture at the top of the article or not?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And the answer is more often than not, it doesn't like them.
Yeah,
Um,
that's so counterintuitive, but I thought
it
it was
is, yeah.
amazing.
And the reason again mostly is because we're looking at the things on these devices. So if you'll see my content, you touched on long form content, which articles.
Mm-hmm.
The best way to do those is what is called newsletters, and I'll share maybe links to two newsletters, which are long form content per month. I might have two posts that will have an image on them, and the rest will be either video or just text only. And what you really need,
Really?
Elaine, is a mixture of all those things. The algorithm actually likes, more so than whether or not they like or dislike images, what they really like is you to be sharing a mixture of content styles. So a little bit of long form, a little bit of stuff with images, stuff that's just text only, and of course native video. Native video just means that you're not sharing a link to, say, YouTube or Vimeo or
No,
something
you're
like that.
just sitting there doing it on your phone.
Yeah, you're just uploading it directly to the LinkedIn platform. Because
Okay.
as an overarching thing, though, Elena, what LinkedIn doesn't like is where you put links to things in your content, unless it's like it's okay what you're doing, where you're linking to say an article that you've written that's on LinkedIn. If the link goes to something that's already on LinkedIn, that's okay. But if it's going off to, say, your blog on your website or something like that, then that's a real no-no. And the algorithms will punish you for, it will
Okay.
definitely reduce your visibility if you're using those links.
Now, would you say, this is a question that just occurred to me. So would you say that what I have done, I don't have a newsletter, but what if I use the article option for the longer form, and then when it says start a post, that's when I use the very, very abbreviated
Yeah,
version?
that's definitely how you should do it, because the little abbreviated version captures people's attention and gives them enough to want to maybe read the full article. And because that's linking to something on LinkedIn, totally
It's on the
okay.
platform. Yeah.
Yeah. However, articles do not get very good traction.
Oh,
The newsletters get much better traction. So I would keep doing what you're doing, but move it to a newsletter format instead of
okay.
an article.
Good, good. All right, here's a question that I think someone asked. How do you get rid of the numbers at the end? Like you have your URL for your profile if you want to give it to somebody, and then there's kind of a series of numbers afterwards. How do you get rid of those?
Yeah, and should you? So yeah, the answer is yes, you should. So you can imagine, let's say you had a very common name. That in Australia, a very common surname is Smith. So if your name was David Smith, as an example, there's likely to be 1,000 David Smiths. So how do they differentiate them? Is they put all this range of numbers on the end of them. However, what you can do, again, if you're logged into your own profile, you can do this on a mobile device. It's much easier, and I'd recommend doing it on a desktop. In the top right corner, you'll see a link that says, profile URL. And if you just click on that, it will open up the section that's got what your actual profile URL
Oh,
is, and it'll allow you to edit out all those numbers. Now, again, you'd probably be fine, Elena, because I'm sure your name's not a
they're not
common
very
name,
unusual. And
so you can
Houlihan
probably,
too.
yeah, so you can probably just have your name and you'd be fine. However, if you go to remove all those numbers and it says this URL's taken, clearly you have to change it, because there can only be one of everything.
Gotcha.
So you might have, like, I might, if there was someone else, and in fact I do know, believe it or not, another Adam Houlihan. He actually lives in the same town as me,
Oh
but
no.
So you could have like Adam underscore Houlihan, or I could put my initial of my middle name, which is Michael. So I could have Adam M Houlihan or something like that.
Okay.
Keep playing around with it until it says, yes, this is okay. And then just
Okay.
save it and you're done. But yeah,
And
just
that's
go in
it.
there and remove all those numbers.
Couldn't you also, well, I guess if you went to something like Bitly or Tiny URL, you would shorten it. Anyway, I don't know what's so terrible about the numbers.
Well, it's just when you're sharing your profile
Yeah.
in, yeah, again, as in positioning as influence. When someone sees your URL with a whole bunch of numbers or whatever, and it's like the masses, as opposed to if you've got your own customized. It's kind
So
of
it's
like,
like a bespoke link.
yeah, it's kind of like having your own personal website as opposed to a company website.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just that these are the little things that just increase your perception of influence.
Okay, great. Now, one more. I see that we're so fascinating, so much to talk about, but we're getting into some time. So one question also, let this be the last one. I have no two more. I've heard conflicting information about creator mode. So should we use it? I think you
Well,
said
again,
we should.
yeah, it depends. Where the conflict comes from is a lot of people have misunderstand what it means, and they think by turning that on that they're magically going to get all this visibility on LinkedIn. So that is not what happens. However, creator mode gives you access to a whole lot of new tools. Going forward, a lot of the new, which we always share about on those web
Yeah,
events
what's
that you've been on,
coming?
Elena, a lot of them are only available if you have creator mode. So the answer is yes, you should be activating creator mode. However, that's on the proviso that you're actually sharing good quality content as well. And that's what it's all about. LinkedIn wants to favor the authors who are putting good content on the platform, and that's why they're creating all these tools under creator mode for them. So if you're not sharing any content, not going to make any difference. If you are, then yes, there's a whole range of new tools and visibility that you get from using creator mode.
And then can't you also, I mean, isn't the feature of collecting many followers only available in creator mode? Isn't that I
It's
don't
not you can actually go into your settings and change it from connect to follow. But if you do activate creator mode, it is by default going to change it from connect to follow. And again, that's often why some people say, "Oh, I don't want to activate creator mode because people can't connect with me anymore." And they can, and I've shown I've shown
yes,
people
I've
how to do
seen.
that. But it's also your connection strategy should really be about more so your outbound strategy than being too concerned about just random people wanting to
Exactly,
connect with you.
exactly. So, a very discreet and selective about invitations.
Yeah, it's
Because
not
that then you end up having a high quality
yeah,
cadre.
yeah, and it used to be, Elena, that how much visibility you got was determined by how many connections you had. That's no longer the case. So somebody with 500 connections can get equal amount of visibility on the platform as, say, me, who's got the maximum connections you can have is 30,000. You can have
Yes.
lots more followers, as you mentioned earlier, but actual connections it's limited to 30,000. But it doesn't matter anymore. As I said, someone with 500 could get just as much traction as I do at 30,000.
Yeah, absolutely. Now these are kind of, one of these is a personal question. So, what's the best way to get in touch with LinkedIn if you have a problem?
You know what? It's interesting, and we get asked that question a lot when people do have issues. And believe it or not, it's actually on Twitter. If you go to called the Twitter handle LinkedIn Help, and contact them there, you'll actually get
That is amazing.
yeah,
Wow.
and you'll get much faster responses if you do it there.
Okay, now my last question for you, and then I'll turn it over to you as the interviewer. I hope I've asked you the most important issues. Happy to interview you again anytime. But I wanted to know, do you have direct connection to the people at LinkedIn?
Look, everybody, well, in
No, I
different,
mean the decision makers,
yeah. Look, nobody really has that level of easy access to them. And look, because we're a LinkedIn agency, of course, we have access to different
this is
people in
why I'm
different
asking.
departments and things like that. Yes. Can I share those with you? No,
No,
but
no, no. I just was curious. No, no, no.
yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
so different, but yeah, there's different levels of access that LinkedIn gives you. As an agency, obviously we have a certain level, but as an individual, you can get access to someone that helps, but it will be determined by how much you're spending on LinkedIn. As a guideline, not a rule. To get access to someone like an account manager at LinkedIn, you're going to be needing to spend at least $10,000 a year on LinkedIn. So, but beyond that, there's like you shared earlier, that anybody can go to like Twitter help or whatever.
Oh, that's amazing. I would never have thought of that. That's a great, great tip. Okay, so that's it. And thank you so, so much for sharing all this wisdom. And it's so early in the morning for you, wise
Yeah,
one. So now you can ask me whatever you want.
cool. So, I just thought later because, as we said earlier, kind of all the stuff we do on LinkedIn is the precursor to getting you to a conversation. But what happens, once you're in that conversation is a whole different level of, influence. So one of my questions I had for you was, once you're at that point, why does that level of influence matter?
Okay, well, for one thing, influence in today's world, I mean, in general, I always explain at the beginning of my talks that, I was kind of ahead of the curve, if you will, because the word influencer is such a big deal now. But what I'm teaching is a set of skills and behaviors. So, about how to personally have what I call personal portable power. So, with all the changes going on in the world, competition, COVID, all these things, it's a very different situation and more competitive. And so, what influence means is having a personal set of skills that you can have with you. It's no longer what your technical expertise, because that can become obsolete, with the next iteration, nor your network, as much as we value networks. I mean, it's happened to me several times when a client division that was getting ready to give me, most of their budget for, starting in October for the following year. And then, they got downsized, removed, and my network of contacts went up in a puff of smoke. So what I say is what people need is something inside you that you can have with you wherever you are.
Interesting. So a little bit, it sounds like that could be almost like manipulation.
Good question.
But can you actually influence someone without it being sort of
Yes.
manipulative?
Somebody was just asking me that because they were talking about someone gave a speech and he kind of used some kind of almost hypnosis on the audience, and 80% of them bought his book or his course, and then 65% of those asked for refunds. So it was a very telling example, right? Because it's not a sale if it doesn't stick, right? And so I think a lot of people are wary of the word influence because, of course, it sounds like manipulation. So let me straighten that out. We're being bombarded these days, especially with political messages, trying to get us to vote a certain way. On TV, we have ads for solutions to ailments we didn't even know we had. And I love how they say, call your doctor. I don't know about Australia, but here you cannot call a doctor. You just can't reach him, right? But we need to be aware of how we're being influenced. And so that's one of the factors that we teach, to understand what was it about that message that triggered you and caused you to say yes. And that is as important as how you do it. So I like to think of manipulation like this. That it depends on two dimensions. One of them is intent. That is, as the influencer, are my intentions honorable? Do I intend for you to have value, to learn something, to get a benefit from what I'm offering? So that's my intention, is to teach you something. And what's the effect? That's kind of the second intention, intent and effect. And the effect is, do you feel enriched or enlightened after our encounter, or do you feel used or exploited or had? And if I can answer those two things positively, then I would say it's positive influence. And the other thing is that manipulation is covert, right? And influence, positive influence is, influence is a force, it's a power, like electricity, and it can be used for good or ill. And so once you have that power, you have to decide for your own moral compass how you want to use it.
Okay, interesting. So what I'm getting a feeling like there's styles of influence. So like you said, it can be used for good or for ill. So would that be right? Would you say, is that sort of part of what you coach? Is it sort of these positive styles of influence?
Well, they can all be positive. And I'll sort of talk about this. They all go into an array. Most people, and most of your audience, for example, and mine, are probably pretty good influencers, but they are unaware. So it's like the unconscious, the unconscious and the conscious, and you may have come from a sale or had a really good encounter, and you got a yes, but you may not know how or why. And so you're using your default, and if you're good enough, you get a high ratio of that. But it may not be so useful, because if you don't know the specific pieces, the components, then you may not be able to replicate it, right? And similarly, if you have a meeting and you bomb, you may get so gun shy that you never go back there again. But that's wrong, because once you learn a variety of strategies, then you have other things to try. So it's really giving you more possibilities, more ways to try. And so the styles, it's not that mysterious, but basically the theory is, which I've always built on the shoulders of other thinkers, but I actually came up with this theory myself, and I have a degree in organizational psychology, but not in creating psychological instruments. I had to hire people to do that. But the basic idea was, having been in sales and marketing for so many years in my life, I kind of looked at what are the behaviors that successful people do and don't do. And so I came up with this typology of 6 styles. And I will be happy to send you my mini ebook. It's a condensed version of my book, and it's called Influence: The 7 Big Secrets in 7 Little Minutes.
Nice.
Because that's the attention span these days, right?
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
And in it, there's a link to a questionnaire, which was, as I said, I came up with the basic, let's say, sketch or the basic draft. I had the basic concept, but then I hired these people called psychometric psychologists, and they come up with, all those questionnaires that you get in business or HR gives you. And by the way, the Myers-Briggs, is not scientific. Did you know that?
No, not at all.
It was started by a mother and daughter, and then it took off like fireworks, but they don't have any scientific research. Maybe they do now, but that's just a little gossip factoid. Not
There
that
you go.
there's anything wrong with it, as Seinfeld would say. But
So, Elena,
go
sorry,
ahead.
keep going.
So
I
people
was-
take the original questionnaire had 55 questions. And again, because of attention span and because I didn't want to give away the store in my book, they could, the book is like $20. So the reduced version is 12 questions, but you can pretty much get a snapshot of your profile. Okay. And your profile shows you the distribution because you're self-analyzing, right? It shows you the distribution of your scores over the 6 different styles. And they're quite different from each other. And so I came up with these names. For example, one of them is telling, the analyst style.
Okay.
And then there's another one called gelling, which is the idealist. So those are 2 examples, and they're really diametrically different, but you may have some of each of those in your profile. So what this does is bring you to your awareness of what your profile is, and the ones that you score highest in, that's your default, but that's just square one, because you have these lazy muscles from the other 5 that are not in your comfort zone. And if you learn them, you would have 5 other doors to go in, so to speak, to learn. Now, so go ahead. Why is it called the 7 Secrets?
I was just about to ask that. You said you mentioned 6, but it's called the 7 Secrets of Influence. So what's the 7th one?
The 7th secret is the uber secret. And it's very, very simple. And most salespeople know, because we're all interested in me, right? The first thing people want to do is take their profile. But that's nice to know at the beginning. But what's more important is, how will you use this as a prism through which to understand more about your customer? So you're not going to meet them and say, hi, nice to meet you. Here's my questionnaire so I can see how to sell to you. But once you learn what these styles are, the cues pop out at you. So that's what I'm saying. And so the 7th secret is influence. I mean, it's not a mathematical formula, but influence equals attentiveness. That's learning and observing the other, plus flexibility. Because why you've been using your default is like lazy in a way. It's just that you didn't know there were other ways, right? And once you learn these other ways, you now have a new vocabulary. And what I say is, it's like getting better radar or 3D glasses. Suddenly you have clues from what somebody says or what they write, the kind of language they use, even in their posts or emails, that give you a clue. It doesn't mean that you have a total analysis, but it gets you ahead of the game because you have some clues. And the more you practice the ones that you don't know, you get better at it. So basically that's the 7th secret.
Nice. And so that mini book, is that what you're going to share with everyone? Like you're going to put a
No,
link to that?
I'm going to share it with you. But I do have a freebie to give people. I don't know how many more questions you have.
No, let's. I think that's a good place to end it. So yeah, I think what everyone's going to want to know is what's the little freebie.
Okay, so I'm going to. The freebie is a book, a booklet, which you'll like, because it was a group of surveys that I did over the course of some months with members of LinkedIn when polls were very popular. So I'm happy if you want to offer it to your people. So it's called, I'm going to share my screen for a moment, if I may.
Sure.
And I'll show you what this looks like. Okay, so this is the first slide, if you will. And what it is this is just a bunch of my books, which are all available on Amazon. And then the next slide that I'll put it in the post because there's not an audience today, so there's no chat, but I'd be happy if you used this link, Adam. So what this is, and what I've been talking about is my live course, which has been a one-day course, mostly in corporate America. And, you know, we didn't do our bios, but we will, or it's in our profile. But, you know, I've worked with some of the largest multinationals, American Express, IBM, AT&T. And so it is a licensed course for people to take within the company. But during COVID, you know, a sort of silver lining was that I teamed up with a group, a very talented group of what's called educational technologists, and created an e-learning version of my course. So it's in very advanced adult learning processes, and it's completely self-paced, but it can also be a hybrid, which means that people do the self-paced learning of a few of the modules. And then we have a forum or a clinic or a webinar where I take questions and things like that. Okay, so I wanted to mention that. That's a little promo. And here is the freebie. So it's called Influence Defined, and it's a booklet. And as I said, it is gleaned from the responses of LinkedIn members of what they think about influence. So I review all the myths that are out there about influence, all the, you know, falsehoods and misinformation. And then I do kind of the big reveal, what influence is. Okay, so that is available for free. It's an e-booklet, and it's available at this link. Okay, so if you need this image, I can give it to you.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, and then finally, I'm very glad if anybody is unclear about anything we've said, you can email me directly. I'm in Montreal, Canada. You can look at my contact info on my LinkedIn profile, or this is my phone number, and try to be aware of time zones. And that's it. So I'll stop sharing now. Okay, so I know I went through that very quickly, but I think you have the links.
That's it. Fantastic. All right, this has been very enlightening, and I think very beneficial for anyone that's going to
I hope so. I hope so, because I think we both really, you know, teach from the heart. I mean, you know, people don't make millions doing this, teaching, doing a lot of giving stuff away for free. And, you know, I feel a kindred spirit that, you know, you come from that place as well. And in terms of competition, you know, there's enough for everybody. It's a big world. You're in Australia, I'm here. We both sell or market globally, and, you know, there's plenty out there. Right. So I want to thank you so much for your time. And if you would stay on, Adam, for a moment, I wanted to ask you one thing before we get off, but I want to stop the recording unless you have some closing remarks.
No, just how much I enjoyed this session, and I hope people get lots of value from it. I do too. And lovely to meet you. And I have never had a chance to really say this. Do people really say good day, mate? Not really, to be honest. Not really. There's a lot of, you see it in the movies and things. That's a little bit. Well, I'm not saying it doesn't. The people don't say it, but it isn't quite common to refer to someone you know as a mate. But yeah, not so much.
Okay, well, lovely. Thank you for clearing up that myth. Always good to have the right information. All right, I'm going to stop recording.